In this lesson, I'm gonna show you how to create rigid bodies in Maya. So before we get started, make sure you open the thing called soccer ball. Okay, so I will select the ball and then move it up, something like that. And then I'm gonna go to field and solvers, and then I will choose create active rigid body. So if I click on that, and now if I go back and play the simulation, as you see, nothing happens because we need to add a gravity. And another thing you'll notice here, we have the translate XYZ and the rotate XYZ colored by yellow. That means there is a connection. Okay, so let's select the ball, and then I'm gonna go ahead to field and solvers, and then I'll choose gravity. So now if I hit play, now the ball falls down. And let's do another thing. We need to add a floor. So I'm gonna go to create and then polygon primitives and then plane. Okay, so let's scale the plane. Something like that is okay. And let's hide the grid because we don't need to see that. So now if I select the grid, and then I'll go to fields and solvers again, and now I will choose create passive rigid body. So the passive rigid body does not affected by the gravity. Okay, so it's used just for the collision. As you see, now the ball falls down and collides with the floor or the plane. So let's say you want to duplicate that. Let's duplicate that by hitting Ctrl and D on the keyboard, and let's move it somewhere here. Okay, so now if I hit play, as you see, nothing happens. So there are a couple of steps we need to do. Okay, so first of all, I need to select that, and in the outliner, right click and choose shapes, because I want to see the rigid body in the outliner. Okay, so this is the rigid body. As you see, when we copied the ball, as you see, the rigid body of the first ball copied to OK. So we need to delete the second one. And now we can close that, or you can hide the shapes. And now let's select that. And then I'm gonna go to fields and solvers again. I will click on create active rigid bodies. OK. And now we created another rigid body. So if I hit play again, as you see, now the problem is the gravity of the ball, first ball, is not affecting the second ball. So we need to assign that. So we can do that by going to Windows, and then in the relationship editors, I will click on dynamic relationships. So here you see in the second ball, we have the rigid body 3, okay? It's called 3, but it's the second rigid bodies, okay? And if I select the second ball, and you'll notice here under the fields, there is a gravity field. So if I click on that, now it's blue, highlighted with the blue. And this is the blue. So this means they are connected now. So now if I hit play, as you see, the ball's falling down. Okay. So let's select the first ball, and let's go to attribute editor, and in the rigid body 1, you'll notice here I have active. So if I click on that and go back and play, as you see, the second ball falls down because we disabled the active option. Okay, here. So let's do that again. Okay, so and here you see we have the particle collision. This is in case you want to collide the rigid body with the particles. Okay, and we have here low disconnections, and I never used that. This is for disconnecting that from the solver, and I really never used that. Okay, here you have the mass. So if you increase that, the ball will be heavier. Okay, so we don't see the result in this case, but in some cases you can see the result of the mass if you increase that. So let's set it back to 1, and here you see the static friction. This adds the frictions to the ball, and you'll notice here we have dynamic friction too. Okay, so the bounciness, so if I increase the bounciness, for example, to 1.5 and then hit play, as you see, the first ball is bouncing more than the second ball. Okay, and we can set that back to 1. And the damping, this is you can think of it like the losing the energy, so the ball will lose the energy over time. So for example, if I set that to 0.5 for example, as you see now, if I hit play, I see now the first ball is losing the energy. Okay, so if I increase that, let's say to 10 for example, is too high. So as you see, the ball is losing the energy. Let's set it to, for example, 3, and let's hit play and see. Now you'll notice how the ball is losing the energy, okay, over time. And the impulse, let's say I want to push the first ball to positive x, okay. So if I set that to 1 for example, or 2, and now hit play, as you see, I am pushing the first ball to the x direction, okay. You can think of it as the velocity. It's not a velocity, this is impulse, okay. And here you see you can control where the impulse position, and here you see the spin impulse. So let's say I want to spin the ball, okay. As you see, there is no spin happening, and let's increase the grid a little bit more, okay. So now if I select that, and let's say I increase the spin impulse to, for example, 20, and let's hit play, and now you see there is a rotation happening on the ball. Of course this is too much, so let's set it to 2 and hit play, and it's really too fast, 0.2 for example. Okay, as you see, of course it's in the wrong way, so let's set that to negative 0.2, and now you see the ball is rotating, okay. And let's scroll down, and you see here you have initial settings. So this is the initial state. So this is works similar to the impulse effect, but it happens in the first place, okay, at the first frame. So for example, if I set that to negative, for example, 2, and let's go back, and you see the effect happening at the first frame. So let's set it to negative 30 and see. Do you notice how the rotation happens, okay, at the first frames? And you have the initial orientation. This, if you increase that, for example, to negative 2, and now it pay, as you see, it jumps, okay. So let's set that to 0, and here you have the velocity. Of course you can increase, for example, if I increase that, this will push the ball again. It works similar to the impulse, okay. So that's it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next lesson.